Hi, I'm Sean McVeigh with Sean's Outdoor Adventures, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to snowboard. Every year I get out there on the slopes and my heart just goes out to all these people who are falling and getting hurt and bloody all over the place. Snowboarding is not easy if you don't know what you're doing. However, if you have the basics down, it becomes much more enjoyable and much easier to learn. So stay tuned. I'm going to go over everything I can give you to get started in this video. The first thing I want to talk about is equipment before we even get out on the slope. Now, I recommend if you're just getting into snowboarding, just rent equipment the first few times. Get used to it and get a feel for what the equipment is like before you go purchasing. When you rent a board, or even if you're going to buy one, you generally want to get one that's at least going to come up to your chin. Some people like it a little bit longer, but what happens is the longer the board, the farther apart the feet can be on the board. So depending on your height, if you're real tall and you have a short board, your feet are going to be very close together. It'll be a little difficult. It's harder to keep your balance when your feet are super close together. If you spread your stance out, it's easier to keep your balance. And so that's just something to keep in mind when you're going to rent a board. Secondly, especially for you people with big feet like me, I have a wide board. It's wider than the regular board because if I ride a regular board, my toes hang too far over the edge and they actually dig into the snow when I'm turning. So for people with large feet, I wear a size 12 or 13 depending on the brand. I would recommend getting a wide board if you have big feet like that or even larger. Next thing I want to talk about is the way your feet are on the board. Now, for me, I ride goofy style, which means my left foot is in the back. It faces uphill. Just imagine yourself snowboarding down the hill right now, and whichever way you're facing, like if you imagine yourself going downhill this way, if your left foot is just naturally in the back, maybe you'll prefer that too. If you imagine yourself going down a hill and your right foot is in the back, then I would encourage you, just whatever comes naturally to you, ride that way. Now, although my dominant stance is goofy style, which is my left foot in the back, I do a lot of switch riding, which means I'll be riding down goofy and then I'll switch around and ride down regular and then I'll switch back. So what I like to do in the placement of my feet is I like them both to be angled out just a little bit. Some people, they always ride with their one foot in the back and they don't do any switching around. Some people, when they do that, they like to have that back foot perpendicular to the board. It's a personal preference thing. So whatever you're most comfortable with, I'm just pointing that out to you because especially on a rental board, they can adjust the way these are angled, the way the feet are angled. So for me personally though, I like both feet just slightly open stance. That's just how I like to ride. Those are some basics on the board itself. If you're renting, your boots are going to be with the board. And usually the rental boards, or a lot of the ones I've seen, they have a different kind of binding than this. The boot will actually clip into the binding. It all depends on where you're riding and what kind of equipment they have. So you'll have to they'll teach you how to use it at that site. So that's the board and the boots. Let me go over a few other things that you're going to want to have before you get out there on the slopes. One thing I recommend is I usually wear 2 or 3 layers. I'll have like a base layer, maybe a long john shirt, and maybe 2 sweatshirts underneath my coat. Because sometimes you could be snowboarding and it could be 10 degrees, which is very cold, especially when you're going down the hill. There could be other times, or even during the day, where the temperature increases a lot. I'll take 1 or 2 layers off. I like to dress in layers so that I can take off or add clothes as I need. In addition to that, you're going to want gloves of some type. Now, I wear mittens when it's really cold because it keeps my fingers closer together, helps me keep them warm. But I prefer using my regular gloves when I can because it's easier to take my bindings apart and get my foot out. The next thing is you really want to have a helmet because snowboarding, you can fall pretty hard, and so you want to protect your head. A helmet's a good idea. Also, I recommend a pair of goggles, which are very important if it's very windy, if they're blowing snow, or if it's snowing real bad. It just helps you be able to see clear on the mountain. I also recommend that your lens be tinted with that reddish color as opposed to the dark tint that you would normally wear with like sunglasses. And the reason is sometimes if you're snowboarding at night, it's much easier to see with the red tinted lens than with a regular sunglasses type of lens. The next thing I recommend is something like a scarf to keep your neck warm, because again, you're going down the hill pretty fast and you want to keep your neck warm so you don't get sick. I also recommend wrist guards. They're very helpful in protecting your wrists from getting broken if you were to fall. Some gloves now they come with the wrist guards built into them. You can look into that when you're looking to purchase gloves. Another thing I suggest is getting gloves that are long enough to cover above your sleeve a little bit. That way you're not getting snow down in your sleeve. And there are all kinds of gloves on the market that have an elastic band that's cinched down around your wrist, and that'll help keep snow from going up your sleeve or down into your glove. Lastly, I recommend some chapstick, which will definitely help protect your lips. Again, you're going down the hill fast, especially if they're blowing snow or if it's windy. It's real easy to get chapped lips, so I recommend some chapstick. Now that I've talked a little bit about equipment, I want to actually get right into the lesson. You don't even have to be on a slope. You can just stand up where you're at right now and begin learning how to snowboard. This right here is the most crucial part about snowboarding, and it involves turning. Okay, a lot of people, they're going down, their body's moving all around, and very often I'll see people leaning back away from the downhill side, really because they're afraid. And so they're leaning back, and all of these things are making it more difficult for them to turn properly. All of the turning that is done is in your toes and in your heels. So stand up. If you're not standing already, go ahead and stand up and get your feet just a little bit more than shoulder width apart, and just kind of squat straight down so that the center of gravity, the center of your weight, is straight below the middle of your stance. Now, be very careful of this, and I often see people doing this. They're bent over when they're going down the hill, like this. They're going down the hill kind of bent over like this, and all of their weight and the center of their weight is over the board, out over the snow over here. This is no good for snowboarding. You want to stand up straight, center of your weight right over the board. So now when it's time to turn, as I said, all the pressure is in the toes and the heels. That's how you turn a snowboard. So in your stance, go ahead and put the pressure on your toes right now. Do you feel that? That is actually going to turn your board toward the side where your toes are. The reason why a lot of people fall is they take pressure off the edge of the board. So when you're snowboarding, you're almost never having the snowboard flat on the snow. You're always on an edge, almost always on an edge. So now you're standing with your weight on your toes. Okay, the edge of the board is what's touching the snow. And the reason why a lot of people fall is they take pressure off, and that other edge, like the backside edge where your heels are, digs into the ground and throws them down. Or if all the weight is on their heels and they're turning this way, they take the pressure off, and then the front of the board digs in where their toes are and it throws them forward. Okay, so you always want to keep pressure on the edge. Now here comes the crucial part. Let's say all the weight is on your toes and the board is turning this way. You'll reach a point where the board will turn and then you're sideways, perfectly sideways on the hill, and you'll eventually come to a complete stop if you stay like that. The challenge is turning back the other way. The way you actually do that is all the weight's on your toes, okay, at this point. On the leg that's facing downhill, you're going to lean toward that leg a little bit, moving your weight forward on the board, and put pressure on that heel. You actually, if you look down at your knee, drive that knee toward the back of the board in a sense. So you're driving the pressure. Now, I don't want you twisting your upper body. I'm just telling you how to manipulate your weight in the stance. So you're on your toes, and you want to turn with your toward your heel side. You put your body weight toward that front heel, and that's going to take the pressure off of your back foot a little bit. And as the board starts to turn, then you can bring your weight back onto the back heel as well. So now it's on both heels, as you're turning, okay? Now while you're on the weights on your heels, now I want you to look down at your knee, and I want you to drive your knee over your toes. So you're leaning with your weight toward your knee over the front toes. Now your weight has come forward a little bit on the board. You're still holding the heel down on your back foot until that board starts to turn. And then you can bring your weight back to the center of your stance and put the weight on your back toe. So you're playing a balancing game, okay? All of the turning is on putting a little pressure with your toes, a little pressure with your heels, and then when you need to make a switch from pressure on your heels to pressure on your toes, you drive the weight over your front foot toward your toe if you want to get toward the toe side, and the board is going to actually start to turn back. Keep that weight there until the board is turned enough that you can center your weight again in the stance and bring the weight onto your back toe. So now all the weight is on your toes again, okay? And then when it's time to switch back, you drive your weight over your heel on the front, and then as the board starts to turn, you bring your weight back into the center of your stance, and now all your weight is on the heels. That is how you turn, especially for you beginners. And the challenge for you is because you will probably feel the feeling of fear as you're transitioning from one side to the other. It's normal to feel that. And a lot of people want to lean back away from that downhill side when what you need to do is attack it. So when you're out on the slope, have courage. Tell yourself, attack. Attack that side of your stance. And you will be able to do it. If you don't keep these ideas in mind and you bend over at the waist, you're not even putting pressure on your toes, on your heels is going to make it harder to turn because your weight is not centered and balanced. So keep yourself up like this, bend at your knees, straight upper body, and all of the turning is in your toes and your heels. And play around when you're out there. Feel right now where you're standing. Feel the center of your balance, the center of your weight right now. Go from your front foot to your back foot and feel where your center of balance is shifting, and you feel all the weight on your back foot. And then just shift to your front foot. You feel those differences. The more pressure on this foot, there's not much pressure on that back foot. That's what enables you to switch the edge of the board. When you're on your toes and you bring that weight forward toward your heel on the front foot, there's not much weight at all in your stance on that back foot, which allows you to bring pressure to the back side of that foot onto the heel. Then you come back to the center of your stance, and all your power is in your turn then. So when you get to a slope, what I encourage you to do is decide which foot you feel more comfortable with going downhill. So if you're more comfortable with your left foot in the back, strap your right foot in and leave the back foot out, okay? And then that's the foot you're going to push with to get up to the ski slope. But what I want you to do when you get there is strap your front foot in, get a flat level area, and then just push yourself, get a few pushes, and then just plop this back foot on the middle of the board and just let yourself glide along and keep pressure on either the toes or the heels, and you'll feel the board turn immediately, okay? So strap the front foot in, and if you have a snowboard and you're at home and you're still new to this, or you've snowboarded before, if you have a little snow outside, even if you don't have a hill, go out on a flat spot, get on the snowboard, strap your front foot in, start to push with that back foot, and then plop it on the board between your two bindings where your foot clamps in, and then just put all the weight on your toes, and you'll feel that board immediately want to turn. And then the next time you do it, put all the weight on your heels, and you'll feel the board want to turn.
Now let's head out onto the slope. The first thing I want to talk about is getting onto a chairlift. There's two main ways that you're going to load onto a chairlift. One, you're actually going to come up from directly behind the chairlift, such as this example. After the chair passes you, simply push your way up to the line. There's usually a line or there's a person standing there, and stop. Then turn back toward the chair and reach out with your hand to grab the seat of the chair and help yourself sit down as it comes in contact with you. Then pick the tip of your snowboard up so it doesn't get caught in the snow as the lift begins to carry you away. Also begin to lower the safety bar. If you're loading the chairlift from the side, you'll come into this from the side, as you can see here. You'll want to reposition and straighten yourself out so that the chair is coming from behind you. Reach back and grab a hold of the seat as it comes in contact with you. Lower the safety bar, keep the tip of your snowboard up, and go safely up the hill. Now I want to talk about dismounting off of the chairlift. You're going to need to lift the safety bar, but you wait until you get very close to do that. You lift the safety bar, keep your tip of the snowboard up, and as it comes in contact with the platform, you want your foot that's free, that's not in the binding, to be positioned on the board in front of your back binding. And you do your best to ride away using the same skills we talked about before to get away from the chairlift. Here's some basic footage of me doing a standard run. Notice how I'm standing upright and I'm bent at the knees. But you'll notice I continue to stay upright, bent at the knees, and I'm shifting my weight over to my toe side. And when I want to turn back to the heel side, I drive that weight over to my heel, and then I shift back into my stance so that all the pressure is now on my heels. Always keep in mind you want that pressure on one edge at a time. Right there you can see that it's on my toes. But you want to keep pressure on one edge so that you do not fall. As you can see, there's plenty of people on the slopes, so you need to be prepared for that. You need to be prepared for dealing with other people going around you or stopping in front of you. So just be mentally prepared that you might have some obstacles to deal with in other people. I usually like to do a few runs to get warmed up, and then I like to hit a few jumps here and there. I don't get real crazy with it, but I do have a little bit of fun. I would just encourage you, especially if you're new at snowboarding, to just get used to it first and don't really get into trying to hit jumps until you can get down the hill without falling.
Yes!
I really hope this video has helped you. I thank you for tuning in. And if you know anybody out there who's just getting into snowboarding as a beginner, please consider sharing this video with them. God bless.